just what you used to.
Yeah. Cochrane has, I was just mentioning, talking to Laura about it, Cochrane, they've got a great a great educational program as well.
I was going to say, I wonder if they'd send us the stuff,
Yeah,
like the graphic.
I'm sure they would.
Stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we can present it to the sign guy.
Some point we reinvented the wheel.
City of Vancouver is a really good user side as well.
I do mine today, but Barb said no wait, so I want to wait till tomorrow so I can see it too.
Weird thing that we did.
Yeah.
Saving up our recycle.
When I went home and told my kids I didn't have to separate the cords in the box board anymore, they were so stoked.
The small things. All right. It's 1 o'clock and I'll call today's meeting to order. Start with number 2 on our agenda, acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples. The town of Rocky Mountain House wishes to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous people, including the Blackfoot, Cree, Saulteaux, Stoney, and Métis. We have an agenda in front of us. Does anybody have any additions to the agenda? I have one. It'll be for closed session. So I guess it will be 15.3 and then 15.4 will be moved out of closed session. And I'm adding confidential evaluations. So, seeing none, Councillor Coles?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. We don't have any delegations today, so we'll move on to number 5, the adoption of the previous minutes. We have the the draft regular council meetings from December the 15th. Anybody had a chance to read them? Okay. Councillor Fraser?
I will move that we accept that meeting.
Okay. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you. We also have the special council meeting minutes from December 17th. Everybody's had a chance to read those. Okay. Pretty good with those? Councillor Brown?
Move that council accept the special council meeting minutes of December 17th as presented.
Thank you. All in favor of that motion? Carried. Okay, so we'll move on to, we don't have any delegation business or old business, so we'll move on to 8.1 under new business is the RFD for the election signage policy. And I'm turning that over to Ms. Harling.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Following an administrative inquiry from Councillor Phillips on December 8th, administration received direction to come back to council with a revised election signage policy. If we look at the policy, I'd just like to highlight the changes that were made. So I did add in the opening statement, I added the time frame that elections signs can be displayed. I added a couple of definitions and also included in the definition for candidate that it means the person officially nominated an election or his or her agent. Under 2B, we just referenced the time that election signs can go up. So the 30 days prior for municipal election or provincial election and 36 days prior to federal, and that they must be removed 72 hours after the close of the polling station, and that's more consistent with Alberta transportation requirements. Again, under C, again, we just clarified the 72 hours on that as well. And under under section D, we changed the sign the size of the signs so that it was consistent with Alberta Transportation, and we also discussed the size with Planning and Development Services, and it was felt that the 3 meters squared was pretty huge. And this kind of just brings it to a more consistent size. The other thing is that we did include the 2 meters in height, which is also consistent with Planning and Development Services. Just added that election signs must be no closer than 1 meter from the edge of curb, and that it should not be obstructing any pedestrians. We just didn't want to see signs along sidewalks where the sign, they put it right up against the sidewalk, so a portion of the sign is impeding pedestrians on the walkway. And then added a statement with regards to that election signs can't be posted on any municipal buildings or property. We changed the statement in the old policy. It had a different location for where the signs would be located, so we wanted to be consistent with practice, which would be, they'd be at the engineering and operations yard until 72 hours after the close of election day. And just cleaned up this section J just so it was cleaner. And we also, I added something in here. Pardon me, just to encourage candidates to recycle their election signs when possible. And just so it's consistent with the town's strategic plan. And then just added a statement as well that for people to just pay attention to the fact that Alberta Transportation has separate requirements, and we do have a couple of highways in town that are Alberta Transportation highways. So, does council have any questions?
I just have a quick one. Is that a federal regulation for the 36 days for federal signs? That's what it is. Okay, thank you. Councillor Phillips?
Just the question I had is, how does the 30-day line up with the nomination deadline? Is it?
Well, the nomination, so we can start taking nominations now. Under the amendment, it was January 1st. The nomination day is September 20th, I think? Yeah.
It's 28 days.
Okay.
Yes, it's 28 days, so it's a couple days prior to the close of nomination.
Any other discussion?
I was going to say, I would like to see no election signs eventually, because I think for 30 days, it's a lot of waste, but they are a tradition for some folks, so.
Your Worship, just in response to Councillor Fraser, that's why I actually put in the, encouraging candidates to recycle, and I actually phoned a couple of the sign shops to see if there were signs that could be recycled, and they can be recycled, and some that aren't recyclable can be reused as well, and so that would be encouraged as well.
Good. Thanks for all of that.
You're welcome.
Okay, no other questions?
Actually, I do have.
Oh, sorry, Councillor.
I know, maybe it's in here, I just don't know. Is there a limit to the number of signs that a candidate can put up? No. No, that would probably be pretty hard to police, I suppose.
Yeah, I would think that would be hard. Okay, and your question? Council's wishes? Councillor Phillips?
No further discussion. I'd like to make a motion that council adopt bylaw 020/2020 election signage policy as presented.
Okay, awesome. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thanks, Ms. Hartling, for that.
Thank you.
We'll move to 8.2, the RFD for the Town of Rocky Mountain House flag flying protocol policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the 2021 budget, council allocated $15,000 to go towards the flags at the town office. Council wanted to see a flag flying protocol in that regard, so we could have consistency throughout the town. What I did for the flag flying protocol is we used another municipal template and basically added in a statement in there and added, pardon me, into our protocol. Revised it to acknowledge our First Nations flags and send a message of respect to our First Nation community members and friends.
Awesome.
Basically, the protocols are established federally, and this protocol is consistent with federal, provincial, and other municipal flag flying protocols.
Good. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward to me. Does anybody have any other comments on this? No? I think this, I don't have any questions. I mean, it's been answered. It's pretty standardized, so. Councillor Brown?
There's no further discussion. I'd like to make a motion that council adopt the 2021/2020 Town of Rocky Mountain House flag raising protocol policy as presented.
Okay. That's great. Everybody in favor? All in favor of that motion? Jeez. I think that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. So we'll move on to number 9, correspondence for action, and we don't have any. So just looking then for a motion on number 10 for correspondence for information for 10.1 through to 10.9. Councillor Alderson?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Moving on to number 11, my report. Anybody have any questions? So just looking for a motion to accept report as written.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Councillor Alderson, all in favor of that motion? It's carried, thank you. Councillor's report. Does anybody have any questions on any of those reports or any of the meetings? Okay, seeing none, I will make a motion to accept all of the councillor reports as presented. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Moving on to the action list, 12.1. Just put it up. Anybody have any questions on that? Councillor Fraser?
If there is no further discussion, I will move to accept the action list as presented.
Any other comments? Okay, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Moving on to number 13, administrative inquiry. I had one and I forgot it and I didn't write it down.
I remembered mine, which I can't believe, so.
Okay, Councillor Narang?
I actually have 2. The first one is an easy one. I was curious about the NSRP, because I know a lot of people are using it for like an off-leash dog area. I was wondering if there's any way that we could actually move forward and have it used as an off-leash dog area or a portion of it, because ours in town is so small, it just seems like a nice spot, and it's being used for that anyways. I don't know what would it take to make that happen, or if there's an appetite for it, but...
Yeah? How do they get in?
Well, they walk under the gate.
Oh,
Like, it's just the bar gate,
Right, okay.
Yeah, Your Worship, we can look at that and see some parameters around it. Like in winter, it's no issue,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
Right, it would just be when it's used, I guess.
yeah.
Especially when there's other animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would have to be,
Just almost like a winter.
yeah, like, because the off-leash park here is so small, and there's fire hydrants in the way of the dogs.
I like the fire hydrant.
I'm just kidding. That was a joke. But yeah, just a lot of space. So yeah, and then my second one, can I carry on to the second one?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, just regarding a Facebook post that I wanted some clarity around regarding the airport. So there was a mention that, and I don't know, I'm not really familiar with the terms, but the CADORS Cadors.
Oh, yeah.
So somebody had mentioned that maybe that our airport had received its first one and it was like a black mark on the Rocky Airport. And I was just wondering, if there's clarity about that?
So, Your Worship, it's incorrect that it's like a black mark. So, in that instance, our airport supervisor was cleaning the runway after a heavy snowfall. So he issued a NOTAM, so a notice to airmen, that the runway was closed. So that goes to NAV Canada. NAV Canada actually issues the CAD order.
Yeah.
Just for an additional notification to pilots.
Oh, okay.
So-
So it's not like a
No, it's a notification.
slap on the wrist or anything like that?
Not at all. It's a notification system.
Okay.
Councillor Brown?
And I think if we could just add to it, those CADORs or CADORs are unsubstantiated, and anybody could basically submit one, so it's not it doesn't come from NAVCAN initially. It's initiated by basically anybody.
And then in that same post, there was a mention that Medevac has been redirected twice because the gate's been locked. And I hadn't heard anything about that.
So, Your Worship, to respond to that, because I seen that Facebook post.
Oh, okay.
And I actually sent out an email to our stakeholders. So actually, the town verified with Alberta Health Services, who's in charge of medevacs. There actually hasn't been a medevac flight into Rocky for the last 4 months.
Okay.
So that is unsubstantiated.
Okay. And I think that was the only questions that I had that came out of that particular post. So, thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any administrative inquiries? And I haven't remembered mine, but I'm sure I'll have it next
I
time.
think at 3 a.m.
Yeah, that's when I
That was
love
the
it.
best.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to number 14, does anybody have any notices of motion? Holy.
It's like an NPC meeting.
Yeah, that's right. Jeez. Okay. So it is 1:16. I'll call a 5-minute recess and we will come back and then go into our closed session.
We're just more efficient in your floor. Yeah.